What's up everybody and welcome back to the channel. During this week we are getting a patch for the void erosion activity, adding events from level 21 to 30, basically allowing us to farm all the way up to level 10 cores. For that reason, during this week I'm going to be releasing some builds and some videos specifically on certain descendants and how I gear them up to do this activity. Now today I'm not starting with Innes, who I believe to be the best option for tackling this activity, but actually rather focusing on Hailey, who I believe is also a really safe choice, in certain cases maybe even better than Innes, just due to the fact that it becomes relatively easy to essentially just methodically make your way through it. Now the reason why I say relatively easy to methodically make your way through it is you will most likely not be setting any speed records with Hailey in this activity, but you exchange that speed for basically being unkillable and essentially just moving slowly through the map, killing everything with your weapons. This is a weapons-based Hailey build, so it doesn't require you to have a sick reactor or anything like that. And basically all you're setting your Hailey up to do is be a walking Terminator that never runs out of energy and always has her third buff up, or her third skills buff up, thereby turning your weapon into a very lethal killing device. And essentially you just mow down everything from the start of the stage until the end of the stage, collect your weapon cores and move on. So specifically when it comes to setting up Hailey like this, as I mentioned, the point is that it doesn't really matter that you are looking for a good reactor or anything like that, because all your modules on this Hailey are going to serve one of two purposes. They're going to either increase your survivability, or they're going to increase your ability to stay in this buffed time as much as possible. So what I mean by this is, when we look at her card, you'll notice that she has an ability called Cold Fury. This ability produces stacks on her going all the way up to 16, and as long as you are stacked all the way up to 16, you are getting a massive boost to your firearm penetration as well as your firearm critical hit rate. Now this is very good in combination with guns, which work very well when they crit a lot. And so therefore this is what allows us to stay in the, to basically stay this lethal the entire time and deal all of this damage. So starting out, building us up here, again, like I said, the name of the game here is either survivability or making sure that you essentially basically never run out of MP. And as long as you don't run out of MP, you can keep this skill up indefinitely. So let's start with survivability first and foremost. Now this is an overwhelming shield build, and I think you can absolutely do this by just cutting overwhelming shield out and just building straight into HP. But this is a very good way to also build it, because most people will have already built Hailey this way with overwhelming shield, because this is kind of like the setup for Deathstalker or something like that. So we're going to start out with that mod, overwhelming shield. Now I've come to realize that some people find this a little bit confusing the first time they look at this. But essentially what this does is it takes you all the way down to 1 HP, and your max HP is 1. It can never go higher than that. But what it then does is any HP buffs that you put onto your character from your external components to other modules and everything like that is actually going to increase your shield value. So basically all HP and all shield now funnel into shield. So in that way you can kind of like double stack that, and that is what makes us super tanky and survivable. So after overwhelming shield, we can start looking at some HP mods. So HP amplification is really good for us here. Let me find it quickly. HP amp says that it gives us max HP and it gives a little bit less max shield. That's okay, that's not a problem. Next one we want to use is also the HP conversion mod, which is another one. HP conversion, this one over here, we're using HP conversion shield, which gives us max shield but reduces some of our max HP. So it's kind of like these two are like kind of like feeding into each other. Then we are also just using straight up increased HP. So increased HP, this over here. And last but not least, we're going to go with increased shield as well. And that is kind of like our full survivability package. And when we take all of this into consideration, we're going to see that we're now sitting at 23.5 thousand shield, which is basically what protects us from damage. We have a little bit of defense as well, but the bottom line is you have a huge amount of shield that you can essentially hide behind. And when we now go back here, we can also add in one other mod that's going to help us replenish that shield quite easily, because while you are doing void erosion, you are killing a lot of enemies. You're killing trash, you're killing yellow bars, you're killing bosses, all that stuff, and there's always a supply of enemies to kill. So something like shield collector is really good for us here, because when you kill an enemy, it gives you 6.3% of your max shield back on a 2-second cooldown. So what this means is in the space of like 6 seconds, you can basically get back like almost like 19% of your shield. And you have to also bear in mind that shield also automatically recharges by itself as long as you stay out of fire. So this is a really cool way for you to also abuse like some of the mechanics inside void erosion, where you have cover that you can hide behind, and it basically turns the game into a little bit of a cover shooter, albeit you can't really, you know, have a button to duck into cover, but it kind of like feels that way. So we have a very good setup here now for being very tanky. And we can give ourselves a little bit of additional damage as well with a mod called Shot Focus, which used to be almost impossible to get, but by now hopefully people have a better chance of getting it, since there's actually ways of target farming it now. So Shot Focus gives us firearm attack plus 15%, but it reduces our skill power modifier by 15%. That's okay, we don't care about that. We don't really use any of our other skills. You could every once in a while roll in a cryo round on a tough enemy if you want to or so, but you don't really need to. You just need to make sure that you always have Cold Fury on. So now, speaking of Cold Fury, the last 3 mods that we're going to put in here are going to be all about making sure that we never drop that buff, and that we always have enough MP for it. So one of the easiest ways to start that is something called energy collection. What this does is it says MP recovery plus 57.7%. This means any way for that you currently have on the character of recovering mana, of recovering MP, is increased by 57.7%. That means your natural regen, picking up blue fucking orbs, everything like that is actually increased by this. Then we also use something called Strong Mentality. Strong Mentality says that your skill cost goes down by 15.2%. So we're attacking this from 2 angles. We're making it so that we get MP more of it more easily, but at the same time as well, we're making the one skill which we use cost less. That we can push to the next level by also, for our last mod, using something called, where is it? Maximize Conservation. Maximize Conservation crushes our skill cost by a further 35.4%, and our skill power modifier unfortunately also goes down by 20%. But once again, we said that doesn't really matter, because we don't really care about our skill power so much as just being able to have this be available. Now you'll notice that this now, instead of costing 12 MP, it only costs 5.9, and its continuous MP cost, meaning like when it's running the entire time, instead of being 10 in 1 second, it's basically half that at 4.9 in 1 second. So with that, then we can look, if we stand here like this, I'm gonna activate it right now, and you can see that that blue line barely moves. And now you have to remember, along the way you're also killing stuff, and they are dropping like mana as well, so you can still get some back. But this means that you can almost indefinitely stay in this, and pretty much I think if you stay in this like this, you don't have any other replenishment, you don't pick up any other blue or anything like that, you're looking at about 3.5 minutes before you completely run out, and that's more than enough time to kill like a boss or something like that at the end of a void erosion cycle. So that's it. That's pretty much the setup. This gets you, as I said, basically into Terminator mode, Hailey. And when it comes to, like, for example, just if we quickly talk about, you know, like I said, Reactor, doesn't really matter. I'm using my snipe Hailey's Reactor here, but you can see that, I mean, it's offering me nothing basically, because again, we're not actually using any of the skill power, but external components are important. Now, you can see here that this is a complete mixture of external components, and that's because the name of the game here is the substats on these. There's not necessarily a set that has good, how can I say, effects for this build. So it's far more important for you to focus on as many HP rolls as possible, because you guessed it, those HP rolls feed into our whole survivability. So I would say that it's, for example, the setup that I have here with my 23.5 thousand HP, or sorry, shield, you could actually have better than that if you have better components than me. All right. So for my first component is just a yellow piece, and of course, you know, any kind of resistances and stuff like that can also help a little. But what you can also, for example, have is MP recovery, you know, out of combat, MP recovery in combat, things like that, because that could potentially allow you to even swap 1 or 2 of the other mods that you are currently using for MP recovery for that instead. So again, there's some work that you can do here, but this is the easiest way that I set this up, and it just really functions, right? So we have 2 HP rolls on our first piece here. Then on our second piece, we have max MP and MP recovery in combat. I would consider this basically almost essential, especially the max MP, because you want that to be as full as possible so that you have a very large pool to draw from for situations where you could be not picking up blue orbs for a while or fighting a really tough enemy. We have 1 HP roll on here though. Then annihilation memory is a good one, because I don't know if this is a fluke in the game or something like that, but this is the only memory, right, that has 646 HP. All the other ones have in 400s. So for some reason this one has 200 more, and that 200 actually means quite a bit. So again, this has 1 HP roll on it and a defense roll, which is also good. Defense does help your the strength of your shield as well as HP. For a long time it was considered that defense only helps with the strength of HP as a stat, but it actually works for shield as well. More defense means that hits reduce your shield by less. And then for our last piece, we have HP and shield on here, and again a little bit of survivability. Toxin is one of the more irritating elements, because it actually deals damage over time, and so and sometimes a lot of damage over time. Toxin can be quite hectic in void erosion, so it's a good resistance to have, even if it's just a little bit. Every little bit helps. That's all good. That's the build done and dusted. Now we need to talk weapons. Now I can have 3 weapons suggested for you here. Now coincidentally, I have specific weapon build guides for each one of these 3 weapons that I'm going to show you now. So if you want more in-depth reasoning as to why I picked the modules on those weapons that I did, please go ahead and check out those guides. They're all from my most recent videos, and it's specifically for each weapon. So simply search for Thunder Cage or search for Excava if you're looking for that. But the first one, as mentioned, is Thunder Cage. Now, Thunder Cage is just really, really strong for 2 specific reasons. First of all, it has really great AoE clearing potential because of its unique ability. And secondly, because it just deals a shitload of damage and fires really fast. So this setup right here takes into account that you are trying to build kind of like a hybrid Thunder Cage. So we're not leaning into crit as much as we could, because we're getting some of that from Hailey, and we're actually putting in some raw damage as well, so that we can get as much power out of the weapon as possible. Of course, it is flavored toward electric, so if the void erosion that you are going up against has more defenses against electric, this is not a good gun to choose, but in any other situation it absolutely fucking slaps. Now you can see that my cores on this are also, I would consider, best in slot for this particular setup. So we have 2 firearm attack rolls, we have a critical hit rate roll, we have a fire rate roll, and we have a sprint speed roll. Hailey gets slowed down by her 3rd ability being active all the way to 16 cores, or sorry, 16 stacks. And so you would have seen that in the footage that's been playing, that you kind of like go slow down to a crawl. So you have to like roll and you have to grapple and stuff like that to make up for some of the time. Otherwise you'll be in there for like fucking 15 years. But sprint speed and stuff like that can absolutely help you a little bit here. But this is a really, really good setup for the Thunder Cage, and a good one to, I mean, once we get level 10 cores, of course, maybe this might change a little bit. I have a second Thunder Cage that I want to go fully into elemental and see if that's a better one as well. Yes, we'll see. But at the moment right now, the footage that you saw was using this. It absolutely fucking melts. The next gun, speaking of melting, is Excava, also an electric weapon, right? So this one is, I went full elemental with this. So we have 3 electric rolls on here, the fire rate increase, and then a rounds increase. This basically turns this into, people in chat and people in the comments have been saying this is as close as a minigun as you can get. I'm probably going to agree with that. This setup right here is pretty much also, again, just leaning very heavily into the elemental side of it, right? And that makes this gun absolutely fucking tear through stuff that is even remotely weak to electric. But with the added benefit of, even if stuff has some electric resistance, this actually still absolutely just demolishes them, due to the fact that it has such a, and let me just quickly switch to it so I can show you, it has such a super high roll on the element, right? So 104k on electric attack is insane, but also 43,000 basically on firearm attack is also no slouch. So really strong option. I cannot recommend it enough. And like I said, both of these work exceptionally well in situations where electric is the preferred element to take it. Then for the last weapon, Albion Cavalry gun. I think this is one of the first ones that I tested when I started running in Void Erosion with a firearms build instead of using skills like Innis or something like Bunny or, you know, Freyna. And I was pleasantly surprised with this weapon, and it's mostly due to the fact that its unique ability essentially locks the battlefield down. So as long as there are a handful of enemies, you will essentially not be getting any fire or attack from any of those enemies, because Albion Cavalry gun stuns all of the targets around the target that you're shooting at, and essentially just makes everything stand still while you just fucking slowly, methodically tear them down. Now, this weapon doesn't deal as much damage as Excava and Thundercage does, but you trade that for exactly this peace of mind that essentially nobody can move around and you can lock down the entire battlefield. That does, however, mean that when you are fighting a boss, you don't necessarily benefit from that utility. But the point is, bosses also sometimes spawn ads, and this can help you deal with that so that the boss and the ads don't actually overwhelm you. Now, specifically when it comes to the weapon cores here, I roll double firearm, I roll chill, since this is a chill weapon, and so we have stuns, but also the target that you're hitting are also getting slowed because of chill. So it's just overall just overwhelmingly depressing to the enemies, because it's just like mud that they have to fucking crawl through to get to you. And then we also have fire rate and critical hit damage on here. So those 5 cores, you can see they're all purple. I didn't even take them all up to gold. We're so close to the patch now, it doesn't make any sense to waste fucking weapon cores and stuff. But this performs exceptionally well. And again, different weapons, different elements are going to do better in different situations. This is an insane fucking setup, for example, for doing wave 19. This makes wave 19 of Void Erosion an absolute breeze. It's not so good in 20, and I would recommend some of the others here. And of course, when we get 21 to 30, we'll also basically say 22 is better for this, 24 is better for that. And of course, I'll bring a guide like that to the channel, so have no fear. When it comes to the mods themselves, what you're basically looking to do here is you want to increase, just kind of like across the board, you want to increase your firearm attack as much as you can. You want to give yourself, because this is a mobbing weapon, sweeping attack is good, squad is good for us, because you know you can pick up additional firearm attack just by killing enemies. You want to give yourself as much fucking ammo in the magazine as possible, so you have essentially a massive, you know, fully loaded machine gun that can shoot for, you know, half a minute before it runs dry. And then we can also increase our critical hit damage and stuff like that. Since we are getting the passive boost from Hailey's third, we can just dip into that critical hit damage to just deal more damage, fire rate up, and chill enhancement obviously there, because this is a chill weapon, and of course because we wanted to shoot faster. This weapon will only get better with tier 10 cores. So all 3 of these are really good right now, and they stand to just become even more lethal. So it absolutely makes sense. I would say the only other 3 weapons that I would consider that you could also potentially run in this setup given the right build would be Voltia. Enduring Legacy, you know, changed from a bossing weapon to a mobbing weapon, could also do something here. And then of course something like Secret Garden could also perform well if you specifically kit it to deal damage, since it has such a high critical hit damage multiplier. So it really capitalizes from the setup from Hailey. That's it. That's the whole thing. This is one of, I think I'm going to do 3 of these. Definitely the other ones also. The next build's going to be Innis. I think Innis is your best bang for your buck character for Void Erosion. It's kind of like she's built for it. The fact that she can shoot through walls and you can kind of like attack enemies without any danger to yourself, and you pretty much just blast through them with your abilities, even if they are resistant to electric, is fucking dope. So look out for that video that's coming soon. But this is Hailey in her gun runner setup, working her way through Void Erosion as an absolute breeze. That is it for the video. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one, and as always, fucking cheers.